Well, welcome to Straight Shooting News. I'm your host, Bandana Ed. Tonight's episode will be our 5th episode of The Awakening. Tonight's episode will be titled, Not Our Founder's Intent. Treason, Researching Murder, and Politically Correct Policing. As we said before, there'll be no resolutions in 2023. It's the massive awakening that will result in resolutions in the future that will be beneficial for the whole human race. Just stay the course, remain confident, stay positive. So we're coming to you from the Merrimack Valley, Massachusetts, where the shot heard around the world was fired at the Concord Bridge. It changed the way the human race would be ruled or not ruled by kings, queens, emperors, or czars. I hear a lot of czars being spoken about these days. So tonight, we are going to make a choice whether this should go under being an awakening or the political pendulum that swings with a hypnotic effect, left to right, right to left, and left to right again and again, till freedom is completely eroded away. But we decided to put it up as an awakening. And remember, our defense to all this is the U.S. Constitution and the U.S. Bill of Rights, which was protected by a Supreme Court decision in 1803 called Marbury versus Madison. All laws repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. That being said, we have no time for the carnival barkers. Here you can get straight shooting news and a taste of reality that we all do need to get us through what's coming and be successful. That's the major part. Okay. Tonight, everything we're going to have is going to be under fair use laws. So with that being said, we're going to start out with the Biden documents and a dangerous panic in Washington, D.C. That when you start and roll that with an interesting spin on it all from Dan Bongino here.
So follow me. This is an important monologue. Last week we asked the question, is Joe Biden a foreign agent? Did somebody flip on him? Because the White House is in damage control mode over this growing, exploding classified documents scandal. And there's even more coincidences adding up and even more money to follow, leading me to ask the question I just asked. Did someone flip on Joe Biden? Because there's a lot of questions that aren't being asked, but should be. And the questions that do get asked get this treatment.
I'm going to defer most of the document questions to Karine.
He has been asked a question a couple of times, and he's answered it, and you all have heard from him on that. I'm going to refer you to the Department of Justice on any specifics to this particular case. I would refer you to the White House counsel's office. I would refer you to the White House counsel's office. I would refer you to the White House counsel's office. I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
You wondering, like me, how all of a sudden classified documents just started popping up all over the place? What do you think? Big Joe just stubbed his toe in the dark on some boxes of documents. Oh, looky here, classified documents. It's almost as if someone told the Department of Justice where to look for those documents. Let's connect now some of these coincidences. The former head of the FBI's counterintel unit, the New York field office, a unit that was knee-deep in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation of Donald Trump, by the way. His name was Charles McGonigal, his head of the unit. He was likely knee-deep in Spygate, given his position. He was just indicted and accused of taking payments from, among others, a Russian oligarch named Oleg Deripaska. I've always said, remember the names. It's one of the greatest tricks I ever learned as an investigator. Why? Because when a name pops up later, you don't need to go back and look at anything. You can connect the dots right away. Oleg Deripaska is the Russian contact who worked with Christopher Steele, who wrote the debunked dossier they used to frame Donald Trump. Of course, though, the media that's really stupid or maybe really dishonest glossed right over those connections.
He was the top counterintelligence official in charge of hunting spies.
Clearly, they have other evidence, this whole separate case involving the Albanians.
What a blow to the FBI and a punch in the gut for many of us who worked alongside Charlie. His specialty was China. He also worked organized crime, Russian organized crime.
And I think there was some initial thought that the investigation into Deripaska's activities in the U.S. led to a broader investigation, which is tied to those payments that you referenced before.
Remember how I started? Is Joe Biden a foreign agent? Again, I don't mean 007. I mean, was he acting on behalf of foreign governments because of money or something else? And did someone flip on him? Well, did you catch the last part? That last part of that interview there. McGonigal's Russia ties may have led to a broader investigation. Oh, really? What else is going on here? Turns out McGonigal, according to the indictment, not only has ties to Russia, but allegedly has ties to Albania and a Chinese energy conglomerate that has interest in Albania too. And wouldn't you know it? The New York Times has also reported on China's business connections in, this is just bananas, Albania, which oddly enough, according to the Washington Post, are the exact same players, this Chinese energy conglomerate, who have ties to Hunter Biden. Let me again show you my shock face. And to put a ribbon on this, according to emails, it appears Hunter Biden's kids may have played sports with the FBI agent's kids. Do they know each other? Well, the wife denies that, as you can see in the New York Post piece. But now something really strange has happened. McGonigal, the FBI agent in question in the indictment, picked a lawyer who was knee-deep in with John Durham, who's running the special counsel investigating the Russia hoax. Now, as a former Fed myself, it'd make a lot of sense if you were about to flip and start cooperating with John Durham's investigation to pick an attorney associated with John Durham. I'm just gonna guess on that. Now you understand why the White House may be getting really antsy when asked about those classified docs. Listen, is it possible that investigators here who initially went after Deripaska, Oleg Deripaska, the Russian, looking to target Donald Trump because of Deripaska's connections to Manafort, Trump's campaign manager, and then they stumbled across the Joe and Hunter Biden connection? They were probably like, don't tell us anymore, it's okay. Fingers in the ears, earmuffs. Did someone then dish on Joe Biden? Did someone flip? And is that how they found out about where the classified documents were? And are all these business bribes outlined in these classified documents? Are some of the same bribes maybe paid to the Biden operation as well? And we know the arrest of McGonigal revolves around influence peddling in Albania, which makes me ask a lot of questions about this Washington Examiner headline about, yes, Joe Biden. We mentioned earlier, he seems to be going really easy on Sinaloa drug cartel operations in, this is crazy, Albania, the same Sinaloa cartel that loves open borders at our southern borders too. Now, these are all questions an honest media would be asking right now if they were even remotely curious. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those. But thankfully, you tuned in to this show. And you, as a citizen of this country, you can ask questions.
Well, how did that sound? Does that sound a little crazy? Not to anybody who's been paying attention and asking a lot of the same questions, wondering what's going on here. So I think the point here that there's probably more to this than just the Democrats wanting to get rid of Joe so he doesn't run for president again. Let's unfold a little bit there for you. So somebody actually flip on Joe, and somebody purposely flip on Joe. Deripaska. Interesting. Everybody made a big deal out of that. This whole Russian collusion. The FBI agent involved in all of this McGonigal gets indicted. And it's really strange now when you start thinking about he hires a lawyer that worked with Durham. So is Durham's team compromised? Is Durham compromised? We know Bill Barr is. That's a fact. Rudy's got the documents and we've seen it. And we're going to show you at the end of the show, someone else is compromised. So we'll explain more on that. So you have the agent with the Russian Operation Hurricane, or with the phony Dossier. You got Russia, all the connections to Russia, connections to communist China, Albania. I bet you never figured Albania to come in there. Albania, I think the country they used in a show years ago about Wag the Dog. Anybody seen that? Well, may want to catch that for a chuckle about what the hell's happening there. Hunter's Energy Corporation, the connections. What are all those connections that are in there? The Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo's group. You know, I think the last time they figured out, they had an annual income of approximately $3 billion a year. They also operate in Albania. But see, this gets better. We're going to hook up with some more information for you to take a look at what exactly could be going on here. But now keep in mind, no one can figure out exactly why Biden and his administration is just allowing our country to be overrun at astronomical numbers of people just walking in. And they're not doing a thing about it. They keep lying to you and telling you they are. And other people come up, well, it's because they want to have this big global happy society and everybody should be able to cross the border, blah, 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 blah. But do you think that there's so much more here that Dan might have just touched the piece on? He said he was a Fed. He knows their mindset. Could there be a lot of criminal cover-ups here that so many in the administration and former administrations all need to cover up? But for now, let's move on to this next piece. I think you're going to find this interesting about Biden's truckload of documents to Delaware University. Roll that.
New information on the bulk of documents that Joe Biden donated to his alma mater, the University of Delaware. According to lawyers representing the parties who are trying to get to these documents, there are 1,850 boxes and 415 gigabytes of electronic records consisting of the so-called Biden records. The documents are said to fill up 2 tractor-trailer trucks. What we do not know is who sent the money to the university to archive and maintain these records, as the university will not release the accompanying so-called gift agreement. Meanwhile, this upcoming Tuesday, the General Counsel for the National Archives and Records Administration will sit for an on-the-record interview with the House Oversight Committee over classified documents found at multiple unsecured locations, including Biden's Delaware home and his office at the Penn Biden Center. This comes as, according to Senator Ron Johnson, an email from Hunter Biden in 2014 about Ukraine to one of...
Think about this for a minute. How would they know about the Ukraine in 2014? Unless there's something pre-planned.
His business partners looked suspiciously like it was taken directly from classified information that the State Department gives members of the Senate when they travel overseas. This email from Hunter Biden to Devin Archer. Joining me right now to discuss all of this is Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. He's a member of both the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees and is calling for a hearing on all of this. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Good to be with you.
Well, first, let's talk about this email from Hunter Biden to Devin Archer. It's quite specific, and we don't know where Hunter Biden got this information. But as you know, your colleague Ron Johnson is raising his hand about it. The email reads, some sort of decentralization will likely occur in the East. If it doesn't, the Russians will continue to escalate their destabilization campaign, which could lead to a full-scale takeover of the eastern region, most critically Donetsk. The strategic value is to create a land bridge for Russia to Crimea. Your thoughts on this email and your calls to get a hearing on what specifically is in these documents that have been identified at unsecured locations?
Well, the one thing we know for sure is Hunter Biden didn't write that. Hunter Biden is not an expert on Ukraine. He's not an expert on Eastern Europe. He's not an expert on Russia. But that email did help get him on the board of Burisma. It did help get him paid $83,000 a month, because it showed a level of expertise, not coming from him, but he was getting it from somewhere. That's clearly from some sort of briefing. We don't know whether it was a classified briefing or not, but that is the sort of analysis that is often within a classified briefing. And this email is unusual in the Hunter Biden emails. There's a level of scholarship and erudition that if it magically appeared, somehow it doesn't appear in the other emails he's sending. The obvious question is, what was he cutting and pasting from? What was his source? And it raises the natural inference that Hunter Biden had direct access to these classified documents. We do know that Joe Biden, it seems everywhere they search for classified documents for Joe Biden, they find it, whether it is Wilmington home, his Rehoboth Beach home, whether in his garage next to his Corvette, whether in the room next to his garage next to his Corvette, whether in the Penn Biden Center. It seems he leaves classified documents wherever he goes. And we also know that Hunter Biden at times declared his residence to be those very same places. And so I believe the natural next step that is necessary is for the FBI to examine the 1,850 plus boxes of documents from Joe Biden's Senate tenure that's at the University of Delaware. And I also believe it is critical for the FBI to search Hunter Biden's home and office residences to make sure there are no classified documents there. Given all the evidence that's piling up, we need to ascertain who's had access to what and when.
Senator, it's very concerning that we have no idea what these documents are. So I want you to talk to us about what these documents could be. You and your colleagues have been asking to get access to these documents. Certainly every member of the Senate Intelligence Committee wants to see these documents. They say enough is enough, but the DNI said no. She just basically said no. And what we have here is a letter to Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, from the lawyers investigating this. And they are telling us that there's 1,850 boxes of the documents, enough to fill a tractor trailer, and the 415 gigabytes of electronic records. But the University of Delaware will not release who paid, who funded the archival and the maintenance of these documents. Was it Communist China?
Well, that's certainly a reasonable inference. It seems Joe Biden, certainly when Joe Biden went to Penn, Communist China paid millions of dollars to fund what he was doing. Communist China, we also know, paid Hunter Biden and the Biden family millions of dollars. And so there's a long history of Communist China writing checks. The fact that University of Delaware is trying to keep these documents secret, in fact, it said it's not going to release any of them until 2 years after Biden leaves public office, I think that's unacceptable. And let me say, the content of these documents, last week, the administration briefed the Intelligence Committee, and I got to tell you, the members of the Intelligence Committee that I spoke to were really frustrated. Both Republicans and Democrats were ticked off because essentially the administration said, go jump in a lake. We're not going to tell you anything. And that is thoroughly unacceptable. Look, there's a range of classified documents. I've read a lot of classified documents. Some are just general geopolitical observations, but there are other classified documents that involve sources and methods that implicate how we gather secret information, and some of the most delicate are those that can endanger the lives of covert operatives. We don't know if any of these documents fall into that category. There's an entirely different level that we need to know, which is whether any of these classified documents that Joe Biden had illegally in multiple locations involve his own family's business activities and potential corruption, whether they involve Burisma in Ukraine, whether they involve communist China and the entities that were paying the Biden family millions of dollars. If he in fact had classified documents that implicate his own financial well-being, that raises the potential of very serious criminal liability. It's an issue I've talked about at great length, analyzing the legal exposure that Joe Biden and the Biden White House faces.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot there to unpack. 1,800 boxes of documents, 415 gigabytes of information. But let me start with this. Come on, Ted. You blew it right there when you said that you suggest the FBI investigate what's going on here with these documents. When these are the agencies all involved, you need to stop just focusing on getting Joe Biden. There's so much more here. All you had to do was follow through the Trump impeachments. Look at the information there, and you can tell. You're going to ask these agencies to investigate themselves? Are you like afraid of these agencies, maybe? That would be understandable. Or could you be doing some covering up for them? But here's the problem. So you got Delaware University. They will not release any documents until 2 years after Joe Biden leaves office. And where all the funding came, they don't want to release it. A lot of money goes flowing into the universities. That's been proven, stated over and over again. But so you're going to wait till 2 years after Joe leaves. That'd be approximately 4 years. What could happen to the world over the next 4 years? Think about it. Many things could happen, like wars, devastation. Many things that the people have been screaming about that are planned. Could use them to cover up the crimes. In 4 years, no one would care. This. And so the Russian invasion of Ukraine was known about in 2014. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. What happened since then? Oh, a man named Trump stepped up running for president and won, and they tried to impeach him. So there's something that was happening. They knew it was going to happen in 2014. That just got delayed. There's a lot to that. We might cover and do a show on what the Trump presidency delayed that would have been devastating for the world and where we could be at right now, that we might be if we don't remedy the situation. Okay? So in a deeper dive, that email in 2014 was to Devin Archer, John Kerry's stepson. John Kerry, the energy czar. Was he Secretary of State back then? Let that sink in. Hunter Biden, Rosemont Seneca, doing business with Communist China also. It's like there's a cash in from both sides. There's also a connection to GOP Senator Mitt Romney and Joe Coffer Black, who sat on the board of directors of Burisma with Hunter. Now, this is the same Mitt Romney whose niece was just reelected as GP chairwoman. This piece could have definitely won into an episode of the political pendulum. Swinging left to right, right to left, which are only defense for we the people. It's the Constitution. Well, let's hear a little bit about this skiff, and I think about how could you get that many classified documents without help from the inside or some kind of conspiracy that was going on to get these documents out for whatever reason. Remember, Joe wasn't president. He was just the vice president. And think of all the names we just mentioned. Heck, in that conversation, even Newt Gingrich's name came up. I've never trusted since he militarized the police with the Clintons in the 1990s. That caused all the blowback against police departments. That's when it all started revving up, when they were no longer the nice local police that, took care of everything else. They started looking like military operating on our streets. That intimidated a lot of people. That started even causing more division. But like I said, let's move on to learn more about this skiff thing. Not just Ted Cruz, but Senator Lee also. Play that.
That raises the potential of very serious criminal liability. It's an issue I've talked about at great length, analyzing the legal exposure that Joe Biden and the Biden White House faces.
Senator, you've been in the skiff plenty of times. How do you get documents out of the skiff?
The fact that he had documents from his Senate tenure, I have to admit, is baffling. I've been in the Senate 10 years. I can state to a metaphysical certainty there are no classified documents at my home. How do I know that? Because I've read classified documents in only one place. It is in the skiff, which is a secure location in the basement of the Capitol. You go down and down and down the stairs. The reporters follow you as you're going, and they stop at the door. They're not allowed to go any further in. You go through a whole series of doors. It's almost like the opening of Get Smart, walking through a whole series of doors. And then you go, there's a police officer, and you check in any electronics you have. You give them your cell phone, you give them your AirPods, you give them your Fitbit, you have no electronics at all. You go through a giant secure door, a second secure door, and you sign out any documents you're going to read, and you read them in that locked room. Right. And then you give them back the documents and you sign them back in, which means if you have them, I don't know how you get them short of. You remember when Bill Clinton was president, his national security advisor, Sandy Berger, who literally took classified documents from a skiff, stuffed them down his underwear because he wanted to smuggle them out, and he wasn't very good at it. He got caught. I don't know if Joe Biden did that, but I have no idea how he got classified documents out of that skiff. I don't know any other senator who's ever done that.
Well, in the middle of this document scandal, Senator, you've read documents that are classified in the secret skiff that your colleague Ted Cruz was just telling us about. What are your thoughts on this new trove that we're learning about at the University of Delaware and how Joe Biden is handling classified information, which he claims he takes this very seriously?
Well, he should take it seriously. The law takes it very seriously. And the punishments for not taking it seriously are great. And those facing the country as a whole are immense. But here's the deal. We found recently that President Biden has documents not only from when he was vice president of the United States, but also from the time that he was in the Senate. I was especially surprised by this latter category. Maria, as U.S. senators, there are two ways in which we get to see classified material. The first is to go to a secure facility known as the skiff. We have one underneath the Capitol. It's in a fortified bunker of sorts. You can't bring in any of your devices. You've got to leave all documents that you reviewed in the skiff at the skiff. What happens there stays there. The second way, in some circumstances, you can have a person with very high clearance bring you the documents you need to see to your office in the Senate. They come in, close the door, nobody else in the room. They take it out of a locked case, allow you to read it. But once you open the case, you may not speak. Can't speak about the document while you're looking at it. When you're finished with it, you hand it back to that person. Person puts it back in a locked case, and he goes away. Under no circumstance does the senator hold on to those classified documents. So I don't even know how he would have done this. It's really scary and confusing to me how that would have even happened.
Well, it sounds like Joe Biden's attorney general has a real problem. He wanted to indict Donald Trump for this, but now we see that what Joe Biden has done is much more magnified and worse than what Donald Trump has done, because Donald Trump had the Secret Service watching any of these documents. Your thoughts?
Yes, that, and also the fact that at the time President Trump had those documents, he was the president. President always has the authority to hold the documents and has declassification authority. The vice president does not have declassification authority. So that's an added ripple as well.
Well, so you just heard from a 10-year Senator, Ted Cruz, explain how you couldn't get it out. He couldn't even have it in his home if he wanted it, because you just can't get out of the SCIF. It's not pretty secure. And why would our Bill Clinton's guy, Sandy Berger, try to smuggle classified documents? Let that sink in for a minute. You know, he got caught stuffing them in his underwear. Well, you need some pretty big underwear to try to stuff all the documents Joe Biden seems to have. So that's, you know, why no investigation into Clinton? But again, if Joe Biden has all these documents, they won't tell us what they are. He had to have had and conspired with somebody to get that amount of documentation, especially at his time as a Senate and even as VP, because like Mike Lee just said, he had no right to collect. Those are Obama documents, Obama administration documents, with people serving in there like Clinton, Kerry. Names starting to connect dots now. There's something really wrong here. That's what we need to find out. But now let's move on to this interesting gentleman who had a special one tonight on Fox News, and I guess he's intending to run for president. But let's hear what he's got to say.
China and the Communist Party continuing its military harassment of Taiwan, invading the island's airspace and waters multiple times just in the last week in what has become almost a daily occurrence. Despite the threat of force, Taiwan's president told Pope Francis in a letter that war with China is not an option. Joining me right now on the threat China poses to global security is the former Secretary of State. He is Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. And Secretary...
Goodness, you know, Maria, you've not spoken a lot about all the challenges America faced from abroad. We've talked about how Ronald Reagan had it right with peace through strength, and the idea of never giving an inch is the central thesis of how you secure America, how you make our nation more prosperous, how you give the next generation the same set of opportunities. You know, we talk about China. If you're afraid to enforce the rule set, if you continue to allow them to walk on the American economy, if you keep giving an inch in every space, Maria, they'll be inside the gates here in the United States, and frankly, that's what we face today. And for 4 years during my time as CIA Director and Secretary of State, I never gave an inch.
CIA Director, let that sink in. We don't need another George H. Bush, former CIA Director, as president, with the devastation he caused.
Well, I mean, that's the point. You know, we have now this document scandal, and we don't know if the Chinese Communist Party has viewed any of these classified documents. We don't know what they are, because the Director of National Intelligence will not allow the Senate Intelligence Committee to even have access to these documents. How much of a national security risk is this?
It's crazy, Maria. We've now had several senior leaders, certainly President Biden included, who had documents where they weren't supposed to be. Get them back. Get these documents where they're supposed to be. And then transparency matters. I heard Senator Cruz say this. We need to know what's in those documents, what the seriousness of them is, what potential breaches there are. And then finally, these senior leaders need to own this. We need to find out if the Chinese Communist Party actually may have had access at the University of Pennsylvania, where President Biden clearly had documents. It would have been a pretty open space. And Maria, you and I have talked about this for years. The Chinese Communist Party is inside every major American university today with research dollars and with their students. They're at the University of Pennsylvania too. And we now know that this Chinese money, these Chinese officials met classified documents in that space. They were in the same place. We need to know if there's any risk they might have gotten a hold of them.
Right, and they've canceled the China initiative, which of course you used to announce a string of indictments. People from the head of the chemistry department at Harvard to others. You closed down the Houston embassy because of the surveillance and the spying going on and the theft of intellectual property. How is it possible that Penn, the University of Pennsylvania, was actually able to lobby this president to shut down the China initiative?
Now, Maria, there's so many questions about why President Biden hasn't continued to pursue a confrontational approach with the Chinese Communist Party that will protect the American people. You mentioned, and Never Give an Inch I write about, they were running an espionage operation, the Chinese Communist Party, from inside the consulate in Houston, Texas, the Chinese diplomatic facility in Texas, the largest spy operation in the history of the United States, I think. We closed it down, and it was part of a broader program that was being worked at the Justice Department, at the State Department, all of which was aimed at protecting Americans from them stealing billions of dollars of intellectual property and destroying millions and millions of American jobs and then dumping this product back in our country. It was indecent. We allowed it to go on for 40 years, and sadly the Biden administration's back to where we were before the Trump administration was in office.
Which is why we constantly ask if he is compromised. I'm also noticing all of these favors done. I mean, the former head of Penn, Amy Gutmann, is now the ambassador to Germany. The other piece is that the chairman of the board of Penn, when the Biden Center was set up, David Cohen, is now the ambassador to China. So, I mean, he's given these people jobs. Victoria Coates tweeted out this: curious to know what role our ambassador to Germany, former UPenn president Amy Gutmann, played in getting Biden to cave to Olaf on the tanks for Ukraine.
Oh, Maria, you raised so many questions there that deserve answers. The fact that the intelligence community and the Justice Department are now denying Congress the capacity to investigate these very questions. Just ask the questions, get to the bottom of it, figure out what happened, who knew what, who saw what. Maria, the Chinese Communist Party is running a massive propaganda campaign using TikTok, and we have someone who's in the House of Representatives, Adam Schiff, now announcing he's going to run for the United States Senate on TikTok. A Chinese propaganda arm and something, a tech tool that they're using to steal secrets from the United States and our kids. This is crazy. We ought to ban TikTok, and we should get serious in every dimension. The risk of these classified documents, we need to find out the relationship between Hunter Biden and China and President Biden. All of these things are connected, and it's not about people. This isn't about being punitive. This is about doing the fundamental things that protect the American people.
I mean, we know that Adam Schiff lied for 4 years, telling us that there was Russia collusion with Trump in plain sight. Now he wants to run for the Senate. Should this guy get another chance in a lawmaking leading position after misleading the American people, dividing the country so much?
So, Maria, I served with Adam Schiff in the House of Representatives on the Intelligence Committee, and then I had to deal with him when he was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee when I was a CI director. Right. Adam Schiff lied to the American people. He kept promising there'll be Russian collusion. Just wait. There's documents. There's stuff. I know this because I occupy this special place. I'm a member of the Gang of Eight that sees the most sensitive classified information. I'm going to share this with you someday. We now know that was all a lie. We know, and we know that he knew that it was a lie. It was fundamentally indecent. Speaker McCarthy made the absolute right decision not to permit him to be on the Intelligence Committee. He will protect America. Kevin McCarthy protected America by making that very decision. And I hope the good people of California will be smarter than to send someone who doesn't know how to handle classified information, who lied to America for at least 2.5 years, won't send him back to the United States Senate, but rather let him go on and get a different job in life.
Real quick, Secretary, before you go, we're all expecting you to run for the president for 2024. Are you about ready to make that announcement soon?
Okay. Well, we're going to stop that there and take that apart for you. We're going to use maybe a more Dan Bongino approach towards what Mike Pompeo, former director of the CIA, just like G.H. Bush, was former director of the CIA, who was vice president under Reagan, and caused a whole bunch of things and problems like the Iran-Contra incident that Reagan knew nothing about. Who could have been behind that? So let's keep the CIA thing in mind. So Mike's saying the right things, and he's correct. We have the evidence we showed you on previous shows about the China connection in the universities, and they just told you right here how they lobbied Biden to shut down the China initiative to investigate China's operations in the U.S. And Mike was also correct there when he said that all the operations they had shut down when he was the director under Trump. So what else have we got here? Well, it gets even more interesting. The chairman of the board at Penn, Cohen, is now the ambassador to China. Pennsylvania University's president is now ambassador to Germany. Those countries all played a big part in the ambassadors and questions that were being asked about and the Trump impeachment. For some reason, when Zelensky got in there, they went into a total panic over Trump talking to them. So the intel agencies are denying any access to these records to Congress, which is what Congress's job is. This gets even more interesting. Now, I also heard Pompeo kind of swerve away a little bit from the when the question was asked about the records and what was being done. Now, if Mike Pompeo was the head of the CIA, he would have had access to a lot of these documents, unless members of the CIA were going to keep the information from him. But he seems like he's too sharp to have fall for that. He comes across, he says the right things. But he's turned around, he pushed that conversation towards TikTok. It seems like he's pretty sly, he's slick. He didn't want to get too deep in there because there's a lot of great questions that need a lot of answers. Maria was his words. So, good tactic to switch the conversation to TikTok. Adam Schiff gave him something else to, brag about. You got to remember, compromised Adam Schiff. He's going to run for Senate. Who's he going to replace? Senator Dianne Feinstein, who was compromised by having a communist Chinese spy as a driver for years. I mean, are all these Democrats compromised? A lot of these people with the GOP? We all know Joe Biden is, and the feds are too. The question will be, there is now one. But let me finish off this segment with this question. How much did Pompeo know? He wants to run for president. Okay. Rudy said, when he runs for president, Rudy Giuliani, he said in his show, and we showed you the clip, that he gave Bill Barr, John Solomon, and Mike Pompeo, who was Secretary of State, the information from Hunter's laptop, which would have contained the information is showing you now from 2014 about them knowing that the Russians were going to invade to build a land bridge to Crimea. So none of this is a surprise to the swamp in Washington, D.C. It's a surprise to the American people. So keep that in mind when you start saying, because we watched his little segment today about his book, Never Give an Inch. And he was saying all the nice things. He's trying to appeal to all these people. He even took a little dig in there about all these people with classified documents. He's taking a shot at Trump too, his former boss. But there's also rumors coming out. I think Rudy Giuliani will he's going to pay attention to, will be exposing quite a bit on Mike, the real Mike Pompeo. And like I said, do we need another former head of the CIA as president of the United States? George Bush caused holy hell and millions of lives. Our way out is we need to go back to this. And I'll even bring up what we showed you a few shows ago, a clip from Ron Paul when he said our founders wouldn't have been too disappointed if there never was an FBI or CIA. With that, we're going to conclude part one.